Hey guys, what's up, it's Dragoon here, and with the Naruto anime finally finishing with episode 500 just a couple weeks ago, to the excitement of some and the dismay of others, Boruto Naruto Next Generations is finally here. This manga has been serialized in Japan for some time now, but finally here in the States, we have volume 1 and we can get an idea as to what this story is going to be about. Now this manga is actually going to be turned into an anime coming very soon. I actually think it starts next week in Japan, or if not next week, it's the week after that. So it's coming really soon. But what about what you could consider to be potentially the source material? Because at this point, we really don't know entirely how much of what the Boruto anime is going to follow in comparison to this manga. Now, this manga was obviously supervised by Masashi Kishimoto, but the art is done by Mikio Ikemoto and the script by Ukyo Kodachi. Now, Ikemoto did a lot of work on the original Naruto manga, working alongside Kishimoto and assisting him. Originally, he started with doing just background characters and some of the scenery, eventually getting the opportunity to work on main characters in the manga itself, and now he is helming the art of the Boruto manga. And then as for Kodachi, he worked on a lot of the Naruto novels, so kind of getting the world building in place for Naruto, which Kishimoto ended up approving on. So in theory, we have a good team of people behind the follow-up to the Naruto manga. But the question simply does remain, is this worthy to follow up the original Naruto manga, or does it even not need to exist? Because I think that's what a lot of people end up wondering. A lot of people kind of aren't happy that this exists to begin with, or a lot of people just kind of wish Naruto would actually end, but you could also argue that you don't have to read Boruto. You don't have to do it at all. I mean, the way Naruto ended was perfectly fine. So how does this stack up? Well, let's talk about the easiest thing to look into for a manga to begin with, which is the arts. And I know back when this first came out, there was quite a bit of discussion as to the art style that's used in the Boruto manga. You see, Kishimoto already created character designs, outfits, and everything for the Boruto characters, at least a majority of them, because the Boruto movie exists, and because he had the epilogue chapter in the original Naruto manga. But Ikemoto decided to kind of adjust some of them. For example, take a look at Sarada here and Sarada's original character design by Kishimoto here. You can see it's not quite the same. Nothing necessarily wrong with that, but Ikemoto is certainly taking liberties here with making the art his own, which is both a good thing and, in a way, a bad thing. I'd say at the end of the day, the art itself is serviceable at best. There are points in which the art looks pretty nice, and then there are quite a few points in which it looks pretty bad. Now, from what I've read, the art of this series has actually been improving over time, which is really good to say because this volume itself only has 4 chapters in it. And I know that this series has only been releasing monthly as opposed to weekly in Japan. So we're getting a pretty big time jump between each chapter when you look at these individual volumes, which kind of worries me a little bit because when is Viz going to take the time to release these? Are we not going to see volume 2 of Boruto for like another year? Man, that is going to be crazy. I really hope that doesn't end up being the case, but I guess at least we fans here in the States have the anime to watch every week, so we don't have to worry about getting stuck behind. Now, I'm not entirely aware as to if the series has moved to weekly yet or not in Japan, but if it hasn't, then, that's fine. These chapters themselves are actually quite long, so even though there are only 4 of them, I mean, the manga is still your average manga thickness. So you're getting a lot of content per chapter in this volume itself, which is great. But back to the art, we can see here on the back, actually, which is another one of the semi-awkward character redesigns. I'll bring it up a bit closer. You can see Boruto, look at him. He looks like such a fanboy with Sasuke. But even Sasuke looks a little different, which is kind of weird, especially people note that the hair for a lot of characters, and the one that was especially noticeable for me was Himawari. She looks so strange in this, and I don't know why. I don't know why Ikemoto decided that we should change a lot. When Kishimoto's character designs were perfectly fine. And actually, I do prefer a couple of Ikemoto's character designs, but for the most part, what Kishimoto had done was perfectly fine and didn't really need to be changed. Do I think that the art takes away from this series and makes it unreadable? Definitely not. If anything, it's just kind of a minor distraction. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and talk a bit about the story here, because that is going to be a key selling point for people who have went through all 72 volumes of the original Naruto manga and seen all of the anime with all of the mountains of filler. Is this story that's presented in Boruto going to be worth coming back for a potentially long haul? So taking a look here at the back, it says, years have passed since Naruto and Sasuke teamed up to defeat Kaguya, the greatest threat the ninja world has ever faced. Times are now peaceful, and the new generation of shinobi has not experienced the same hardships as its parents. Perhaps that is why Boruto would rather play video games than train. However, one passion does burn deep in this ninja boy's heart, and that is the desire to defeat his father. Yeah, and that's kind of a decent synopsis for how this story begins. Boruto is pretty angsty as a character, and in a way you could sort of consider him kind of unlikable, especially at the beginning, because he doesn't seem to empathize with his father at all. Naruto is the Hokage, obviously, so he has a massive workload ahead of him. More so, they emphasize it in this volume than they really ever did with the previous Kage. They sort of showed off Tsunade slacking a bit, but still noticing she has tons upon tons of work to do, and they showed it a little bit with Kakashi as well. But with this, they kind of really took that message and made it hit home, because you see that Naruto spends so much time in the office, he will send emails to his children to congratulate him on things, and Boruto's biggest offense was that on Himawari's birthday, Naruto sent a shadow clone to be with them and to celebrate, and to that, Boruto decided was one of the worst things ever. Boruto hates the fact that his father and even his grandfather were Hokage. I think he thinks that he has too big of shoes to fill, and he wants nothing to do with the position. He doesn't want to be Hokage. He doesn't want people to think of him like the Hokage. And it's sort of kind of like how Konohamaru acted at the beginning of the Naruto series, but not quite as loudmouthy in a way. Not quite as whiny, I suppose. Boruto is definitely not exactly like Naruto. I think they're both, in a way, at the beginning, they're sort of unlikable, like I mentioned before, because when Naruto first started, I didn't like Naruto as a character much at all. And I feel like this is entirely possible, the same for this series. Boruto could certainly have a lot of character growth ahead of him, but the only time will tell if that ends up being true. On that note, one thing that is interesting is the fact that Boruto opens up with a cold opening. Set years after where a majority of the story likely takes place, we see Boruto standing atop a ruined Hokage mountain. Up against this enemy, we have no idea who he is at all, but Boruto knows him. How he knows him, who knows? He says, "I can't believe you went this far, Kawaki." And Kawaki replies with, "Don't worry, Boruto, I plan to send you to the same place I sent the 7th Hokage." So one can assume that this guy killed Naruto. How? How did he kill the most OP character in the show? The guy who has destiny on his back, the soul of Ashura, the 9-tailed fox. Or you could just imply that somehow he imprisoned him or something along those lines. Something a little less severe than that. But either way, this guy has somehow bested the main character of where all of this began, and in a way it's a little unbelievable. But at the same time, if you notice in this first shot here, Boruto has Sasuke's sword, he has Sasuke's cape, and he has Sasuke's headband. He has all of Sasuke's stuff, which could lead someone to believe that this guy defeated Sasuke too, or Sasuke's just gone. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. He likes to disappear for long periods at a time, but I just found that to be kind of, a lot of people actually found that to be an interesting way to open the series, and a not so good way to open the series. I think it's okay, like I kind of like cold openings, but at the same time it's like, how are we gonna come to this? Like, that's so different. And it sort of ends that opening with Boruto activating the Byakugan, but only in one of his eyes, and he says something along the lines of, "I'll stop you," or whatever it may be. And then it kind of proceeds to him saying, "This is my story, it's not my dad's story," and back to what I was saying before, he wants to defeat his father. So what does he do? He looks for Sasuke, because He's a fanboy, I guess. He wants Sasuke to train him so that he can stop Naruto, so he can prove himself. I don't know. Who knows? We're only in volume 1. And without getting too deep into the plot itself, Boruto ends up deciding to take part in the Chunin exams, which will allow him and the rest of his team and his peers to move forward on the ninja ranks, putting him one step closer to going up against his father. Sounds a bit like the original Naruto plot, in a way at least. But here's the kicker, and the thing that I think is going to set Boruto apart from the original Naruto manga. Boruto takes place, as we know, plenty of years in the future, and as you know by the epilogue chapter of the original Naruto, technology has advanced quite a bit over the course of this time. But in Boruto, they've developed this really OP sounding device that you can put on your wrist, and these very tiny scrolls are loaded inside of it. And when you want to activate a jutsu, you hit the button on the device, the scroll pops out, you kind of do some flashy hand motion, and boom, you can use the jutsu. Boom, the jutsu comes out. You want to use a fireball jutsu, hit the button, fire. You want to use the Rasengan, hit the button, you have a Rasengan in your hand, ready to throw, ready to do whatever you want with it. Sounds really too much. And the series insists that these devices are in the testing stages, and Naruto hates them. Naruto does not like the fact that you can sort of cheat your way into being a ninja. But lo and behold, our good buddy Boruto gets his hands on one, because the technology unit in the Leaf Village says, hey, if you use one of these, you'll be good enough to do well in the Chunin exams, and that's one step closer to surpassing or impressing your father. And he says, alright. So he takes it. And I'm not going to talk about what happens later on because we only get a sort of glimpse of that in this particular volume, but he takes it. And I feel like that's going to end up playing a larger role in the story as we move forward. This kind of clash between technology and the foundations of shinobi. Speaking of the foundations of shinobi, Sasuke ends up finding these people who he believes to be related to Kaguya. He has a little battle with them and kind of brings the intel back to Naruto. And then we later see a shot of these people who are looking for power. I'm not going to talk about too much, but they're looking for power. And I feel like that's going to end up being another overarching conflict in this series. However, with that being said, everything I've talked about thus far, at least I believe, is in the Boruto movie that Kishimoto had designed and directed. So if you've seen the film, everything I've just said you already know about, and then you know what happens beyond that, which is in a way kind of a downer because the series begins with nothing but recap for fans who've already been involved so far. I, unfortunately, have not yet seen the Boruto movie, but I hope so soon as I can get some money to pick it up. So it's entirely possible that a handful of these plot points can be resolved within the first 2 to 3 volumes, especially that stuff with the people who may be related to Kaguya. I'm sure the film would not introduce those characters and then not resolve something with them. I'm sure they have to do with the final battle and all that good stuff. If you've seen the film, please don't spoil it down below for anybody who has not. We'll get there once we talk more about later volumes. And my only theory behind what is the final volume in this chapter potentially not being in the Boruto movie is this. You take a look at all the titles here, it says Part 1 to Part 2 and Part 3, but the last one isn't called Part 4, it's Naruto, The Path Lit by the Full Moon. So it would make at least a little bit of sense that the first volume of Boruto has some recap, and then it has at least some amount of new material to get people to buy it in the first place. I don't know if that's true or not, but we'll find out. That's about it for the overall story of this volume without going too in detail for anything. Like I said, a lot of it is retread of the film, so that could take away from the overall plot and enjoyment some fans may get from this particular volume. So the last thing I'd like to touch on at least a little bit here are the characters. The characters are, I think, what is going to make or break this for some people. For myself, I actually really enjoyed seeing the interactions with the older characters and the new characters, seeing how the next generation resembles the previous one or is different from it. I think that's always been one of the coolest things for sequels like this. Looking at your main trio here, we have Mitsuki, Boruto, and Sarada. If you haven't already seen the movie or read this, I will not spoil who the parents of Mitsuki are. However, you can already assume Boruto is Naruto's son and Hinata's, and Sarada is Sasuke and Sakura's daughter. Each of them all have their own little quirks and character traits that make them interesting, and I think one of the coolest parts is seeing how they resemble or don't resemble their parents. Boruto obviously gets the most amount of book time in this particular volume, volume, I'd say, followed by Mitsuki, and Sarada gets the least. She is kind of like barely here, which is unfortunate because I'd like to see more of what she does. However, I guess she did get that entire Scarlet Spring manga, and there's always plenty of time for that in the future. Unless she gets the Sakura treatment, in which case we'll get nothing out of her, and I hope that's not the case. So having said all of that, you guys, should you pick up Boruto Volume 1? Well, if you're in it for the long haul as a collector, that's gonna be up to you. If you want to collect, definitely you're probably gonna want to pick it up, especially if you're a completionist. If you've already seen the Boruto film, I don't know. If what I assume turns out to be true in the last chapter of this manga volume itself turns out to be new story that is not in the film, I'd say you kind of have to pick it up just to follow the story along, or at least just, I don't know, rent Volume 1 from your local library. But at that point, I mean, there's still going to be film-related material in Volumes 2 and possibly even Volumes 3, so who knows when we'll finish recapping the film itself. If you haven't seen the film and you're a big Naruto fan, I certainly think there's no harm in at least checking out Volume 1. That was pretty much the reason I picked it up, just to see, hey, do I like it enough to keep going, or is it just gonna be some trash? And I'd have to say, I liked it enough to buy Volume 2. It was a fun read, and at the end of the day, that's what matters for me, man. If I'm gonna be buying manga, I don't care how good it is, I don't care how incredible the plot is, how incredible the art is, and everything like that. I just want to have fun while I read it. If it's an incredible piece of work, that's awesome. That makes it all the better. But even if it's not perfect and I'm having a lot of fun while reading it, that's all that really matters to me. I can always appreciate the masterpieces that we get in manga form over the years, but there's always been a special spot in my heart for Naruto. It's one of the series that I grew up watching and reading and everything like that, so I'm certainly willing to give this a shot. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you have picked up Boruto Volume 1 and if you enjoyed it. As always, please do not spoil anything for our fans who have not yet gotten into the series. And with that, I'll catch you guys next time.